Hi guys, welcome to this class. In this class I'm going to show you how I made this chocolate bar from start to finish. This class is comprised of a few parts. First we're going to make our caramel sauce. I'm going to talk about chocolate versus candy melts. I'm also going to explain what is chocolate tempering and how I temper my chocolate. We're going to make the chocolate bar together, and finally we're going to make the decoration. Okay, so in a saucepan I have 1 cup of granulated sugar. I'm gonna place it on low to medium heat, and I'm gonna stir for every now and then until the sugar is completely dissolved. Now do not be tempted into putting this on high heat because you might burn the sugar and it won't taste any good. And the process should take about 10 to 15 minutes. Now that our sugar is dissolved, we're gonna add the cream. I'm using heavy cream at 35%. I'm gonna add 1/3 of the cream quantity at a time. So since I'm using 1 cup, I'm gonna add 1/3 of a cup every time and stir. Now you're gonna notice that your caramel is gonna bubble and it's gonna form some lumps when you add the cream. This is completely normal, and you're gonna keep it on low to medium heat while stirring constantly. Here it's really easier to use a whisk, and whenever everything is fully melted and combined, you can turn off the heat and we can proceed. Now remove your saucepan from the heat, and I added 1 teaspoon of vanilla. If you want to make salted caramel, feel free to add a pinch of salt at this stage and combine. Pour your hot caramel into a heat-proof bowl or jar and let it sit at room temperature until it's 100% cool. So while we're waiting for our caramel to cool down, let's talk about chocolate. Now here I have some navy candy melts, and these are from New York Cake, and a bag of Hershey's white chocolate chips. Now the reason I chose to work with Hershey's chocolate chips is because they are available to anyone at any local store, so they are pretty easy to find. So how do you know which chocolate to choose? To start with, candy melts are really easier to use than any other types of chocolate. And what I mean by other types of chocolate is chocolate chips, chocolate bars, or the chocolate that we buy from wholesalers, the ones that are more expensive than others. And the reason why I classify them in 2 categories is because candy melts, unlike other types of chocolate, do not need to be tempered. So what is tempered chocolate, and why do we need to temper the chocolate? Now, I'm not going to go in depth with this. I'm just going to share my knowledge. Please note that I'm not a professional. I'm just here to share what I know. So basically, when we melt chocolate, the molecules of the chocolate separate, and if you don't temper it, the chocolate will not set at room temperature and it will melt easily between your fingers. Additionally, it won't have that shiny and glossy finish that you want, and it won't crack when you want to break it. Now there are a few techniques to temper chocolate, but I'm going to show you the technique that I use because I find it to be very easy and doesn't require a candy thermometer. Okay, so I have 1.5 cups of white chocolate chips and I'm removing half a cup. Now I'm gonna start by melting my chocolate chips using the double boiler method. So I have hot boiling water in my saucepan, and I'm gonna place my heat-proof bowl over the water. Make sure that the bowl does not touch the boiling water. And I'm gonna start by stirring slowly. And as you can see, the chocolate is starting to melt. So you're gonna stir until all the chocolate is melted. When the chocolate is completely melted, remove the bowl from the hot water. Now we're gradually going to add the chocolate that we set aside earlier. And it usually takes 3 to 4 batches. Now, before you add the next batch, you're going to make sure that the previous one is fully melted. Now, obviously, each batch is going to take more time to melt than the previous one. And you know that you should stop adding more chocolate chips when the last batch takes some time to melt and that your bowl is at room temperature. Now I ended up adding 4 batches, and I know that my chocolate is tempered because my bowl is at room temperature, it's fully melted, and my last batch took forever to melt. And now we're ready to color it. So as you can see, white chocolate has kind of an ivory finish to it, so I'm gonna add Color Mill white oil-based color. When it comes to chocolate, you're only gonna use oil-based colors. If you use gel-based colors or liquid-based colors, the chocolate is going to seize and you're not gonna be able to use it anymore. Now you're going to keep adding white color until you are satisfied with the outcome. It is important to note that candy melts actually come in a white color, so you don't need to actually color them. So now that we have covered how to temper and color chocolate, we are going to proceed with our chocolate bar with this 3 parts mold. Now for this project, I'm using green candy melts. And you're gonna start by pouring the candy melts in the bottom layer of your mold. You're then going to add the middle layer and proceed by adding the top layer. And the easiest way to do so is to flip your mold over and press down. And you want to make sure that your chocolate actually covers this line on all 4 sides. And after that, you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna let it sit at room temperature, or you're gonna pop it in the freezer. I'm gonna explain this in the next part. So here are some other facts that you need to know about chocolate and candy melts. Now, a lot of experts say that if you temper chocolate and place it in the freezer or in the fridge, the tempering is gonna get ruined. But this is something that never happened to me, so I'm gonna explain the method I use. So what I do is I allow my chocolate to sit at room temperature for 2 to 3 minutes, and then I pop the mold in the freezer. It's gonna take a maximum of 5 minutes until it is ready. And then I take it out of the freezer, I pop it right off the mold. It's pretty easy to take it off when it's sat in the freezer. And then I let it come at room temperature for a few minutes before I proceed with whatever I'm doing. Now again, this is something you don't have to worry about when you're using candy melts, because basically they don't need to be tempered. So if you pop them in the freezer or in the fridge, they do not really get affected, and this is why people usually prefer candy melts when it comes to these types of flavors. So while we're waiting for our chocolate to set, I'm gonna measure the mold. This is the top lid, and I got 14 centimeters by 7 centimeters. And the reason I do this is to know how much I should cut from my chocolate transfers. So this is the sheet I'm using. You can find these under the chocolate transfer section on Sugar Art's website. And it comes with 4 designs. Simply choose the design you want and use your scissors to cut it. Now I'm gonna mark the measurements I got, which are 7 by 14 centimeters. And I do this by flipping the transfer over. Now make sure that the surface you're working on is 100% dry so that your transfer doesn't get ruined. My chocolate bar has been sitting at room temperature for 20 minutes and it's ready to be filled. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, it is less time consuming if you place these in the freezer, but you know, whatever works for you. So I am removing the excess chocolate using my X-Acto knife. Now this is totally optional because when you remove the chocolate bar from the mold, the excess will fall by itself, so you don't have to actually clean the edges, but I decided to do so. And now that the caramel has been sitting at room temperature for about an hour, I believe, it's completely cool, and I'm ready to pour this inside my chocolate bar. Now in the PDF that you can download when you purchase this class, you notice that on the caramel sauce page recipe, I do mention that if you want, you can adjust the consistency of the caramel sauce by reducing the quantity of heavy cream you use. So if you use the same measurements as I did, which are 1 cup of sugar and 1 cup of cream, you will get a sauce that will not set in the fridge. It will not become fudge-like, it will stay as a sauce. Now you'll see at the end of the video that I do break the chocolate bar, and you will see even after sitting in the fridge it will still have the consistency of a sauce. So because I used these measurements, what I did is I allowed the caramel to sit in the fridge for about an hour so that I don't ruin the caramel when I apply the chocolate on top. So again, it's really up to you and what you want to fill your chocolate bar with. Okay, so at this stage, you're going to work fast. You're gonna try to work as fast as you can, especially if you used a cold filling. The reason why you need to work fast is because if you used a cold filling like I did, the chocolate is gonna set really fast. Especially if you're using tempered chocolate, it's gonna set really fast. Now with candy melts, it's a bit easier. Either ways, try to work as fast as you can. And what I'm doing here is I'm shaking the mold as gently as I can. You can't really tap hard on the bottom because you will break the chocolate that has already set. And I'm doing this so I get rid of as much air bubbles as I can. You can further avoid the formation of air bubbles if you place your melted chocolate in a piping bag. But for some reason, chocolate in piping bags stress me out, so I avoid doing that. You're gonna place your chocolate transfer on the melted chocolate. Image should be down, the plastic should be facing up, and you're gonna press gently just to make sure that it touches the whole melted chocolate. And now you're gonna let it sit at room temperature, or you're just gonna pop it in the freezer for 5 minutes and it's gonna be ready to remove from the mold. You can remove any excess chocolate using your X-Acto knife, and whenever you're done doing that, just peel off the plastic and you will have your image transferred on your chocolate bar. I decided to use some gold leaf on the back of my chocolate bar, so in order for my gold leaves to stick on the chocolate, I am brushing the sides with vegetable shortening. To decorate the front of my chocolate bar, I decided to go with the method I posted on Instagram. The video got almost 700,000 views, so I thought why not explain it furthermore in a class. So I'm using Color Mill oil-based colors. Always make sure to use oil-based colors when it comes to chocolate, even if you just want to paint on the chocolate. So I'm using baby pink, baby blue, and a yellow color. Now I'm gonna mix 5 drops of the white color mill with 1 drop of yellow because I want it to be more of a pastel color, because the baby pink and the baby blue are more of pastel colors, so I wanted to match the other 2 colors. So I ended up using 5 drops of white, 1 drop of yellow, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna add 1 drop of each on the chocolate bar. Now I ended up using all the yellow I made, but for the other colors you're just gonna put 1 drop on the chocolate bar. Now you're going to take a clean brush and you're going to brush your colors on the chocolate bar. If you're using different tone colors, make sure that you go from the lightest to the darkest. And when you move from one color to the other one, do not go back to the previous one. A question I got asked a lot is that if the paint actually dries. My answer is actually at 90%. If you would say it does go matte, it doesn't stay shiny. But I would say avoid putting these in cellophane bags or like wrapping them, because at some point you still feel like if you place your finger, it might transfer just a bit. Here I have some gold luster dust and I'm gonna add just a few drops of alcohol. I use vodka. If alcohol is something you don't like to use, you can simply use lemon extract. So you're just gonna add a few drops until you form a paint consistency. And we're gonna splash it on the bar. Now I would advise you to give the ombre paint just a few minutes to set before splashing it with the gold, because the gold has some alcohol in it, and oil-based paints and alcohol are not so friends. Finally, I decided to add a glitter spray, a silver glitter spray on my bar, and this is my finished product. Again, the decoration process is whatever you want it to be. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this class. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Have a great day. Bye.